Well, hello there everyone. Welcome to Music is a Journey. I'm Peter Scove. Today I am going to make my video contribution to the Japan Vinyl Tag 2024, which was created by Brian at Tokyo Record Style. Brian is celebrating 20 years of living in Japan. He recently found his old passport, opened it up, and found that he was stamped on arrival on August 18th, 2004. So to celebrate his 20 years, he decided to do a vinyl tag of 20 questions or 20 items. Now, of course, Brian realizes that we have all just completed the summer vinyl tag as well. There have been a lot of contests and threads going around, and it might be that a lot of us are just a little tagged and threaded out. Would that be frayed? Possibly. Anyway, but he decided he really wanted to do this. So there's no pressure. Anybody who feels it's a little bit too much, that's all right. Or he said you can also go ahead and just answer like 10 of the items or show records for a third or a half or whatever suits you if you even want to participate at all. I myself thought, yeah, I am actually eager to get on with my own video schedule. However, having been in Japan for a long time myself, I thought maybe I can participate this time and help Brian celebrate. However, I did notice that Brian's items are slightly esoteric. You say esoteric, I say esoteric. But anyway, his items, some of them were amongst the most challenging, and I really had to think of some of them to come up with even an idea. And then there were a couple of others where I just kept changing my idea. Now he has labeled each of these with a title followed by a description. So yeah, I have recently been trying to make my videos a little shorter than they used to be. However, this one promises to be a long one because I have a few stories to tell along the way, and why the heck not, Brian's video is certainly not a short one either. So I hope you'll stay with me all the way through. If not, you know how to click the fast speed button there if you like. And so anyway, let's get started. I would like to say one thing. Watching Brian's videos, he describes his album choices very enthusiastically. He can pick an artist that I've never really been interested in, or an artist I haven't really thought I want to check out, or even just an album I've never heard of before, and he can make any of them sound like they are the greatest recorded material that you have never heard before. So I'm going to try to do my best to make my selection sound at least half as interesting. Here we go. Item number 1 on the list is called Obi 1. If you buy a record or CD or cassette in Japan, the item will come with what's known as an obi. Now an obi actually is from the kimono. There is that kind of sash or belt that goes around the waist on a kimono. That is called an obi. And records, CDs, cassettes also come with an obi. Now vinyl records, the obi is exactly that. It's a belt that runs around the whole CD, and the purpose of the belt is to supply some quick information that you can look at. Band's name, album title, what album is it? Is it their third, their fourth? When was it released? Was it successful? What are the hit songs on there? So it's like a quick advertisement board to tell you what is interesting about this album, why you might want to pick it up. Now, of course, with CDs and cassettes, we don't have that strip running all the way around. Instead, it's folded and tucked in on the end, so you get a little thing like this here. So if any of you have ever bought any albums or CDs or whatever from Japan, you will most likely have received an obi. I think it's also important to note that for resale value, having an obi, especially one in good condition, increases the value of the item for sale. So I have, of course, a lot of CDs that come with obis. However, Brian mentioned an interesting additional point is if you can decipher some of the lettering, the Japanese lettering on the obi, you get bonus points. So I decided to go with this one here. This is the debut album by Styx. These were all reissued in Japan around 2016. I mean all, meaning the debut album up to the 12th album, I believe it is, which is Edge of a Century, released in 1990. So the 12 albums up to that point were all reissued on these mini vinyl editions. And what's interesting is that on all of Styx's albums, the name is written in the Japanese syllabary here, katakana, as Styx. However, on the debut album, it is written as Styx. Now, of course, if you don't read katakana, you won't know that, so just trust me. It is written as Styx on here. And this is really interesting because I wondered, why is it that the debut album was written Styx? Why did they think the band's name was Styx? So it had me wondering about the pronunciation of Styx, because I know the adjective form is Stygian. I don't think it's Stygian. I'm pretty sure it's Stygian. So is it actually Styx in ancient Greek? So I decided to look it up on Wikipedia, where they had the Greek spelling of the river's name, and then the international alphabet spelling. And there it was curiously written as Styx, which had me wondering because I've never heard of Styx before. So the next thing I did was to take a look on the internet to see if there were any pronunciation guides. However, all pronunciation guides I found, YouTube videos and whatnot, it was either the same guy having his pronunciation guide in different videos where he pronounced it as Stax. He said it's pronounced Stax, that's the correct pronunciation, which I'd never heard before and sounds a bit ridiculous to me. Or it was somebody else saying that it's Styx. So, what is the true story? Well, I happened to find another Wikipedia listing where it lists the pronunciation and spelling guides for the river's name in many different languages. And one of them curiously lists the name of the river as it is pronounced in Japanese with the katakana lettering, and there it is spelled as Styx. Just like the International Phonetic Alphabet spelling based on the ancient Greek spelling. It's Styx. Okay, so that was really interesting, but it doesn't actually explain why it is pronounced as, or written as Styx here. Where did they get that from? Anyway, my selection for OB1 is the debut album by Styx, where their name is written as Styx. Now, as I said, Brian has... Maybe I said it, maybe I didn't, but Brian's 12 items are all inspired by Japan, Japanese culture, Japanese things. However, it doesn't mean that you absolutely must show something from Japan. You can show... He's made the question so that you can show probably just about anything to make it fit. So in the case of where you don't have any releases with an obi, he said you can show an album with an interesting insert. So yeah, of course, link to his original video down below, so hopefully you'll take a look at that. Let's move on to item 2. So item number 2 is to show a Japanese artist. And I'll add right now that if you don't have any Japanese artists in your collection, you can show a record or a record with a song that has some reference to Japan, naming Tokyo or something about Japan, or the band's name has something to do with Japan, something like that. I have shown a number of Japanese artists. In fact, a few years back I did a video naming pretty much every artist I had in my collection. I don't have a huge ton of them, but I do have a couple of dozen, and I decided for this video here, this is one I probably have only ever shown once before. This is a band called Kinzoku Ebisu. And what I think is interesting here is that Yebisu is written in the style of the Yes logo. The Y, E, and the S come exactly from the Yes logo. And then they've just added the BI in here. This is Origami Mushi, and there is an illustration of a praying mantis down here with a long stringy thing coming out. That is a parasite worm, which is Origami Mushi, or on the back it's called the Gordian worm. Kinzoku Ebisu. They are a progressive rock band. However, to be honest, my two favorite tracks on here play out more like really hard rocking tracks, like a very scratchy, growly guitar, lots of energy and power in the music. But they do also have some other longer compositions. I think there's some flute playing. I don't remember if it was on this album or another one I saw on YouTube. So anyway, a progressive rock band that do also do some heavy stuff. And they have male and female lead vocalists. It's been a while since I've listened to this album, but anyway, my selection for item number 2, a Japanese artist, this is Kinzoku Ebisu. Item number 3, this is the Land of the Rising Sun, so music you would play at sunrise. Well, my first thought was sunrise is such a peaceful time. You stand and watch the sun come up as the day starts, and I tried to think, what would I have in my collection that would suit that moment? But quite honestly, the type of morning I enjoy best is being out in the mountains, preferably up on a mountain ridge, waking up before the sunrise, grabbing my camera gear, getting out to an excellent vantage point and grabbing some shots of the sunrise coming up. In the past, that usually involved having 2 or even 3 different cameras ready of different formats when I was shooting film, and then quickly hustling along to other locations to grab scenes of the morning as it unfolded. If I could pick a music to go as a soundtrack to a montage of me doing what I love best in the mornings, it would have to be something exciting and bold and adventurous. And so for that, I have chosen the opening track of the debut album by the 12 Girls Band from China. Now, I don't remember the Chinese pronunciation, something something, but in Japanese it would be Joshi Juni Gakubo. Now, they were really popular in Japan about 24 years ago. Certainly their first 3 albums were promoted in the CD shops. There were videos. I bought the first 3 because there were several tracks on each of the albums that I really liked. It is a band of 12 Chinese women playing traditional Chinese instruments. The songs or the tracks are either traditional pieces arranged for the orchestra, modern pieces arranged for the orchestra, or original compositions. The band is often accompanied by a drummer or drum set, as well as additional percussion, and sometimes also some programmed drumming, which I don't like, and maybe some keyboard as well. But mostly the emphasis is on the sound of the traditional Chinese instruments. And the opening track on here, sorry I don't know the Chinese pronunciation, but Japanese it's kiseki, which means miracle, and it is a track to introduce us to this band and all of the instruments. So it is an exciting orchestral piece, and it just reminds me, like, if I imagine that music in my mind, I can see myself out there striding across the mountain ridge with my tripod over my shoulder, or standing before the sunrise, you know, getting the shot ready and focusing and getting the shot there, and watching the sun coming up and the light of the, cast across the sky and the shadow of the mountains cast across the valley beyond, behind me. That is the soundtrack I see for myself out on those adventurous mountain mornings. Item number 4 is city, because Brian lives down in Tokyo, so he's into the city life. He's into street photography, I know. And his item number 4 is for a song that captures the feeling of the city, I guess the pulse of the city. I, however, live at the edge of a much smaller city, a little bit north of Tokyo, and all my life I have lived like this, at the edge of a city with greenery not so far away. I prefer to have a view of the mountains nearby, knowing that I can get to the mountains, in this case here, within about half an hour. If not the mountains, then at least some very pleasant countryside. My choice for a city song, originally I was thinking along the lines of Lost in the City, Alone in the City, or Free from the City, or something that paints a feeling of discomfort of being in the city too long. I then decided maybe I didn't want to be a stick in the mud and I should pick something a little bit more positive, and so I started thinking of some other tracks. But finally I hit upon this one here. This is the album Subterranea by the British neo-prog band IQ. I think this came out around 1999 or 2000. It is a double album, and it is a concept album, narrative concept, a story loosely based on reality, of a person who is raised alone in an underground room and has absolutely no interaction with anybody except, I forget what they call him now, but is that a mosquito coming in here? I had to close the screen because the mosquitoes are coming in now. So he's raised in a room by himself and he's just given food, but basically he has no interaction with anybody. And then once he becomes an adult, he is brought to the surface and just dropped out in the street in the city somewhere. And his reaction is, of course, one of complete shock because he has only known this quiet solitude of his room all his life. And now he is out in the middle of a bustling, probably American downtown. And I'd just like to read the description in the verses because, in a way, this describes my feelings about the city, although this is perhaps a little bit extreme, but let's see here. Belly first, unrehearsed, I'm thrown from all I've known, a silhouette among the badlands paved with stone. Photographs, fingerprints, fragile refugee, high-rise fire in a sky society. Cadillac, heart attack, back of this beyond. Pusher king, TV queen, accommodating blonde. At Trader's Gate while you wait, gender reassigned, surgeon carves the matching halves, the blindfold leads the blind. Powerhouse, sacred vows, trigger-happy punk, driven by hidden eyes and figure-hugging junk. Heaven knows, if I'm close, am I unreleased? If I'm in hell, I may as well be famine to the feast. Okay, it's a bit extreme. My personal feeling of the big city is that it is an interesting place to visit. I might go to Tokyo once a year if I have to. And usually when I'm down there, I enjoy looking at the architecture. I enjoy photographing the buildings against the sky or the angles of and how the light plays in between the buildings. And it's sometimes interesting to see some of these shops, especially little details of smaller shops down back alleys and that sort of thing, narrow lanes. And of course, there are always interesting people to see. But the city is a place that I want to go in, kind of enjoy the experience of being there as a visitor, and then leave again and get out to my quiet suburban area, almost at the edge of Exerbia, really. So yeah, there we go. My choice... Still hunting that mosquito. My choice is the title track Subterranea from the album by IQ for City. Gee whiz, between cats and mosquitoes, it's hard to keep track of my pacing. So item number 5 on the list is Zen listening. So something, music you would listen to meditate, to relax your mind, to unwind. And honestly, I don't really have so much of that in my collection. I always appreciate a beautiful, mellow piece of music. I can appreciate something that's atmospheric or meditative, but an album's worth is just something I can't listen to. I need variety, I need excitement, I need power or adventure or something else in there. However, I did make multimedia presentations with slides and music back in the 1990s, and for those landscapes and nature scenes, I did need music that was, you know, not going to be something like black metal or alternative rock. So I did actually have a few albums in my collection that were more of this new age or relaxing type music. So the album I'm going to pick here is Cristofori's Dream by David Lance. And I think this was the first album by David Lance, and also on here is Paul Spear. Now Paul Spear I have talked about a few times before. He used to be in a band called Stone Garden, which was a heavy psychedelic band in the late 60s, early 70s, but later on he became a producer, and as well he began working together with David Lance producing this relaxing new age music and did a series of albums. More recently he has managed to merge both styles, so he does have this kind of atmospheric and impression creating new age music a bit, but also manages to put in some guitar solos as well, and he also has some albums that feature a little bit more exciting electric guitar playing. But that's Paul Spear. This is David Lance, Cristofori's Dream, and one actually interesting point is that the cover photograph here was taken by one of my favorite photographers back in the day when I used to study photography books voraciously. It's Freeman Patterson, who is from New Brunswick out in eastern Canada, and I have a number of his books. So that was kind of interesting when I bought this, and I thought, that looks like a Freeman Patterson photograph, and as it turns out, it was. So that is for Zen Meditative Listening, Cristofori's Dream by David Lance. Item number 6. This is Go 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 Godzilla, and what Brian is asking for is an album that really smashed all your expectations of what music could be, destroyed your expectations, like Godzilla marching through downtown Tokyo and smashing the heck out of the city. Some album that did that for you and perhaps even sent you on some great journey into this new world of music you didn't know existed before. This was a bit tough for me because, first of all, I did make a video about, I think it was 10 albums that really blew my mind and thought, wow, I can't believe a band created music like this. So I didn't want to repeat anything from that. But I thought about this a lot. I was thinking further down the spiral, the kind of remix album of Nine Inch Nails' The Downward Spiral. I think that still remains the most impressive industrial album that I have ever heard. But I thought about something else. Music that smashed my expectations and then took me off on a great journey. So here it is. And this is going to require a bit of a story. This is Rush, Farewell to Kings, and Rush, Hemispheres. 2 tracks on here, Xanadu and Cygnus X1, and La Via Strangiato on this one here. All 3 tracks create a landscape or an image with music. Xanadu, you have the bird chirping sounds, you have some of the exotic percussion, you have the excitement building into the story, and then the story begins. You have your adventure going through the caves of ice, almost dramatic music, and wrapping up with the kind of unfortunate ending of not being able to escape from Xanadu. I felt that music really painted the picture of the story told in the lyrics. And the same with Cygnus X1, launching off into outer space, traveling across the cold, empty vacuum of space, arriving at a black hole with the intention of driving one's vessel directly into the black hole, and the very exciting, dramatic ending with the music almost going around the chords like a circle, a swirl going around, and then the final dramatic scream as they plunge into the black hole. And again, La Via Strangiato being a dream that Alex Lifeson had, and then how the music for each part is an attempt to create an impression of that part of the dream that he had. And that really impressed me, that a rock band would try to compose music in that way. Now, this led me on to the journey of progressive rock. Now, first of all, I wasn't really sure what progressive rock was. I had only heard the term once before. But after getting into Rush and buying all of their albums, and then finding out what progressive rock was, I found out that I had already been listening to a lot of bands that fell into the category. Of course, I had the Yes album on cassette back in the 1980s, but also I listened to bands like Alan Parsons Project, the Moody Blues, even some Iron Maiden compositions are considered progressive rock. Bands like Jethro Tull, of course Pink Floyd, even Blue Oyster Cult, Voivod. There were just so many bands in my collection that would show up on the Prog Archives website. So after going through Rush and then going into Yes and getting all their studio catalog, I then went on this big exploratory journey for the next several years, exploring progressive rock, of course the classic stuff from the 70s, as well as a lot of the newer bands, and that led me into progressive metal, which brought me over to Opeth, which then brought me back into the extreme metal scene, which I had given up in the late 80s, early 90s. And so it is really thanks to those 3 tracks from this album that I have, I went on a journey of probably a decade or more, exploring all sorts of exciting new music and spending way too much money. Okay, so Go 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 Godzilla, music that destroyed my expectations of what music could be. It's those 3 tracks from Rush. So next up is an album that was ahead of its time, and I think probably there are a number of ones you could think of, but I'm going to go with this one here. This is the debut album by Bathory. At the time, I got the second album, The Return, and I had to get this one as well, and I really enjoyed them. There were no bands out there doing music like Bathory in particular. Of course, I'd listened to Slayer and Celtic Frost and Venom, but nobody sounded like Bathory. Skip ahead many, many years later, and some years ago I was exploring black metal, like Norwegian black metal of the 1990s for the first time in my life, and I was really astounded how many bands reminded me of Bathory, or the vocalist sounded like Quorthon, the vocalist for Bathory. And then I finally picked up this album on CD, and listened to it, and it was just like, wow, this is really like the original template for the Norwegian black metal scene, or Scandinavian black metal scene if you want to include other bands in there as well. So for an album that was really way ahead of its time, I would say it's Bathory's debut album. And when you watch videos or read anything about the origins of the whole 90s black metal scene, particularly the Norwegian black metal scene, you will find people mentioning that this is one of the most important albums, or the starting point for the true sound of what would become black metal. It is still different from the Norwegian style, but there are an awful lot of similarities. So this came out in 1984, I think it was, but the Norwegian black metal scene didn't really gear up and develop its own unique sound until the early 90s, so early to mid 90s. So I'd say it was ahead of its time. Item number 8 is an album that you would want to have on a cassette tape to put into a Sony Walkman, plug into as you walk around the neighborhood or walk around the park or whatever. Okay, so this is coming from the perspective of vinyl listeners who have to sit at home with their record player and put their records on and think, gee, wouldn't it be cool if I couldn't take this out with me and go mobile, as we did in the old days, copying a record to cassette. As for me, I don't have a record player. I don't buy vinyl because I don't have a record player. Everything for me since 1990 pretty much has been CDs, and ever since MP3 players and iPhones came out, I just put everything into my computer, load the albums I want to listen to onto my iPhone, and that is how I listen to music, because my time for listening to music is during my commute. So I have probably about 3 to 4 hours to listen to music each day as part of my commute. So I am always listening to whatever I'm into at that time as I walk through the suburban neighborhood, the residential neighborhood, get out to our small city center and go through the whole rigmarole of getting to work and coming back again. So for me, anything goes. However, I thought one album that I've really been enjoying recently, and I think is an album that many people would probably enjoy if they listen to it, this is the album Casual Viewin' by the band 5440, and this album came out in the year 2000. 5440 were more of an alternative rock band for most of their career, going through the 80s and into the 90s. However, on this album, there are only a few songs that are similar to their earlier works, and a lot of the album includes more of what I would call a smooth groove. There's more of a groove rhythm. There are some backing female vocals. There are some samples, like harmonica sample that's on a loop a little bit, or the female vocals that seem to be on a loop a little bit. There are some, of course, drums, but I think also possibly some programmed drumming in here. And there's just less of a guitar driving feel and more of a fun, good feeling feel. You also get some saxophone and horns in some of the songs. You can check out the song Casual View, and there's a video for it on YouTube. It's just a great feel-good song, and overall this is a pretty positive feel-good album. So I think this is a great album for listening to on a cassette, on a Sony Walkman, as you walk around your neighborhood, walk around town, walk around the park, wherever you do your walking. Casual Viewin' by 5440. Item number 9 is a bullet train, the Shinkansen, an album or music that has an unstoppable groove and just goes at high speed. Okay, so high speed, well, hello thrash metal and death metal, black metal as well. Yes, I have quite a number of albums to choose from, but I also caught the vibe of the groove. Now, if I think about it, I don't have albums that are specifically groovy, although I do have a lot of albums that include songs that are groovy. However, those songs that are groovy or have a good groove to the music don't really go fast enough to match the speed of a bullet train. So, I am going to go with my thrash metal selection. However, I'm going to go with the image that I really like, and this is of not of a bullet train, but a steam locomotive, where inside there is a raging hot fire burning, and the energy from that fire is being channeled into the water boiler to make the steam, to move the pistons, to move the axles, to turn the wheels as the train is going full tilt down the track. As well, though, this is an old clunker of an engine and it is just rattling. The bolts are loose. It is held on in places with duct tape or wrong-sized screws that are rattling in their holes. And this thing looks like it's about ready to either fall apart or flip off the track. And for that image, I'm going with Aggression, a thrash metal band from Quebec who I believe they've only ever released a couple of albums, and one of them goes back to, was it 1989, I think it is. Their debut album anyway, The Full Treatment, and this is exactly that, a thrash metal album that is really going off the rails. It is like, put all the fire and energy of your bodies into the speed and aggression of the music, and never mind if it sounds like the recording studio is going to burst apart at the seams or is going to be held on by duct tape, spit, and chewing gum. Whatever. This album just has that feel. You know, a lot of the other thrash metal bands, it was about speed and precision. And later on, things got a little more intricate and involved and almost progressive in a way, but this band is just like a bullet from a gun. It's noisy, it's loud, it's fast, it's deadly. So that's my choice for item number 9, the Bullet Train. I'm going with the steam locomotive Bullet Train style of Aggression, thrash metal band, and their 1989 album, I think it is, The Full Treatment. Item number 10 was interesting. It's described, the title is Lost in Translation, and I first thought my impression would be an album that you just really didn't get, or it took you time to get it. And for that, I could have easily picked Magma. I have an album by Magma, what is it now? Mechanic Commando Destructif or something like that. I really can't get into it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't do anything for me. But Brian went on to describe an album that actually sounds very exciting and I'm interested in checking out, where the story is like this fantasy world where there are these demons that eat rainbows. I don't know. Sounds really cool. And so he said, you know, music that takes you to another world. So, probably the third time I'm mentioning this album ever on this channel, but this is Gandalf's Fist, A Clockwork Fable. And this is a 3 CD set. There you go, 3 CD set. And it is a story about a society living underground. You see, what we can gather is that Earth has suffered some kind of a holocaust, probably a nuclear one. The surface of the Earth is unlivable, and so the surviving humans across the world have gone underground to live. And in this story, we are a traveler visiting this underground city, and we are met by the lamplighter, the man who goes around lighting all the lights, and he gives us a tour of the city. Now, we happen to be there in time for an annual great festival that is going on. But behind the scenes, the giant cog, that is the master cog turning all the cogs in the city, is found to be slowing down gradually, which means that once it stops, all cogs and machines throughout the whole city will stop. And there are various characters in here. There is a tinkerer who is making the discovery and his assistant. There's also the a kind of archbishop type guy and the mayor of the town, and everybody has their own agendas. And it seems that if the cog stops, that must mean that the surface has become relivable. And there's only one way out, and there's a double key that is necessary. You have to put the two parts together. Who has those parts? Where are they? They have to find them. They have to get that lock open and check the surface outside. Meanwhile, there are other forces, other people who don't want this to happen. They want to keep their world underground. It's a very exciting story, and what I love about it is that it is told as a radio play with actors and sound effects. And it's 3 CDs. Probably 2 CDs worth are music and 1 CD worth would be the radio play. However, it's broken up so that you hear a bit of a chat. You hear a chapter you hear a song, and the song gives some extra additional information about what's going on in the scene in the chapter. And then we move on to another chapter and another song and another chapter and another song all the way through. So it is really one of the most extraordinary concept narrative albums I've ever heard. And quite honestly, I enjoy the radio play style telling of the story so much, I actually don't remember most of the songs on here. But they are all great. It's just I'm so into the story, I often kind of listen to the song, go, okay, yep, that's good, that's good. Ah, here we are, back into the story again. So for Lost in Translation, but an album that takes you into another world, this is Gandalf's Fist, A Clockwork Fable. Item number 11 is a live album inspired by all the live albums recorded at the famous Budokan in Tokyo. I am not a huge fan of live albums, but I did pick out one that I'm very glad to be able to talk about. However, before we do that, I want to tell you a little story about the Budokan. So Deep Purple played at the Budokan way back in the early 70s, and the night before they had played in Osaka. And Ritchie Blackmore was not really thrilled about the audience reaction. He felt that the audience had just not given enough. So when they finished their main performance in Tokyo at the Budokan, Ritchie Blackmore thought, I've had enough and I'm going back to the hotel. So the band went off stage. Ritchie Blackmore snuck off and got in a vehicle, a car, taxi, limousine, whatever, and went back to his hotel. The rest of the band did not know, and they walked out on stage to give an encore performance without Ritchie. And they soon realized, where is he? He's not here. And I think they went ahead to try to play a song, but the audience noticed, hey, where's the guitar player? And they were not having it. And a riot broke out. Now, the floor seating at the Budokan was folding chairs, so people began throwing the chairs. People began breaking things. And this was a historic moment. After this, Deep Purple were actually banned from Japan for a short while. I think their popularity got them back again, but at the moment it was like, ban this band, they caused trouble. Now, why this story is interesting for me is because I left Japan for a while, but I came back in 2006, and one of the students I taught was a woman who at that time was in her early 50s, and she was a real estate salesperson. She told me she was at that concert, and I thought, what? I mean, you were there? Part of the riot? She said, yeah. I broke a couple of windows in the girls' washroom and broke a toilet stall door too. And I was almost in awe. Like, I can't believe that historic event. I am speaking to someone who participated in the riot at that Deep Purple concert. Wow. Yeah, anyway, so my selection for a live album, I'm very glad to talk about this. This is a band called the Polka Dogs. And the Polka Dogs, I don't think they're around anymore. I think they were a short-lived act. But they were, I think, possibly, based on the lyrics, they're from Ontario. However, they performed at the Vancouver Folk Festival. And the Vancouver Folk Festival, what was it now here? I can't read it. Vancouver Folk Festival recording. It's a Vancouver Folk Festival recording. There is some label name, but I can't see so well these days. And I still don't have glasses. So anyway, they performed at that, and their performance was recorded. And as far as I know, this is the only recording ever done by the Polka Dogs. Now, the Polka Dogs, let's see if I can read the description here on the back. It says here that the Polka Dogs are an unlikely musical collision of some of the best popular music of the 20th century, cooked up in the brain of writer and lead singer John Millard. The combination of theater, rock and roll, classical, and improvisational music is inspired as if it were, a Muddy Waters, Bertolt Brecht, and the Talking Heads had all butted musical heads in New Orleans. Yeah, a friend of mine played trombone, and there's a trombone on this album. So he went to the festival, he bought the CD, he played it for me, I liked it, I bought the CD too. Let me just check here. I wrote down what instruments are on this album. So let's see, we've got banjo and vocals, free bass accordion, tuba, drums, and trombone. Yes, that's what we have here. And a lot of interesting, fun songs, all performed live at the Vancouver Folk Festival. And my favorite track on here is one called Slag Heap Love. And let me see now, the lyrics are so interesting, but it's a story, as it's described at the beginning, a man who played the bagpipes, and he couldn't practice at home in his apartment because of the noise. So he lived in Sudbury, Ontario, where they have all these slag heaps, and he would go out to the slag heaps to practice. And one day, while he was out there practicing, he heard a snare drum. So he looked behind one heap, and no one was there, and he looked behind the next heap, and no one was there, and he looked behind the third heap, and there was a beautiful woman playing a snare drum. What are the chances? So anyway, this guy who played bagpipes and this beautiful woman who played snare drum, of course, they hook up. And that's the title of the song, Slag Heap Love. Now there's a part in there that I really like where it says, "We need more than a stupid corner store selling smokes, combs, and chocolate bars and alcohol to grease balls. We need more than a chuck blade roast, a frostbitten strip, and a heavenly, heavenly host. We're just waiting around the laundromat, talking about real life, where it's at, around the corner by the super stack." And the way it's sung, the way with the music, and then the way the trombone solo breaks in, I just love that. It's one of the highlights of the album for me. But that is a live album. This is the Polka Dogs, recorded live at the Vancouver Folk Festival somewhere around 1989 or 90 or somewhere around then. So that's my choice for a live album. Never had a chance to talk about this before, so there we go. I didn't know this, but it doesn't surprise me. There are music listening bars in Tokyo. You go in, you pay a table price and sit down and order a drink, and you sit quietly and you listen to music. And the bar owner is the one who puts the album on, and you just sit there quietly enjoying a drink and just listen to the music. It is not a place for loud talking and chatting. It is certainly not a place for indoor pictures with smartphones, as Brian found out when he inquired about one album that was being played. And the shop owner told him, "Oh, it is this artist here, and this is the album cover." And Brian thought, "Oh, great, I think I want to check it out." So he took his phone out to take a photo of it and got told off immediately. "No phone pictures, no photography in this establishment. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And see, this is the case where you'll see, sometimes you hear about it in Japan, there are establishments with signs saying "No foreigners, please." And it sounds very discriminatory. But the reason is that sometimes these places have a very strict atmosphere that is understood by Japanese. They understand the rules, they get it. But foreigners will come in and they will think, "Oh yeah, I get it. And then they go and make some major faux pas and causes a disturbance in the store, and then, everybody gets upset, the whole moment is ruined, the foreigner is asked to leave, and it's either embarrassing for everybody or it's an outrage, whatever. And so I can see in a case like this here, you got the store rules, you got the establishment rules, this is how you have to behave, and then just in an honest slip, Brian took his phone out to take a picture. I mean, it was not that he was intentionally bending the rules or thinking he could get away with it. It just happened. And he was so sorry for it. But anyway, sorry about it. Now, what albums do I have that I would think people would sit quietly and listen to? There was only one that came to mind, and it's one I mentioned very recently as well. Of all the albums I have by this artist, this seems to be the album I mentioned the most. This is a Japanese singer, Maki Yano, or Yano Maki as we call her over here. And this is her third album, Kono Sekai ni Ikite, Living in This World. Her previous albums were singer-songwriter, but a bit edgy, sometimes a little bit aggressive on the guitar sound, certainly very powerful vocals, unusual vocals for a young Japanese woman, especially someone who is rather petite as she is. She has powerful vocals, partially inspired by Alanis Morissette nonetheless. But this album here, as you can see by the cover, took on more of a smooth vibe. There is only one track that really features any kind of buzzing guitar sound, and it is more of a mellow, slightly edgy track. And after that, we are into some kind of Latin beats or some piano or acoustic songs, and it's just more of a cool, what you would probably be comfortable listening to in the environment of a Tokyo listening bar. It is probably the only album I have that I feel suits the environment based on the image I get listening to Brian's story. So, for something to listen to in a Tokyo listening bar, Kono Sekai ni Kite by Maki Yano. Yano Maki. Island Nation. This is item number 13. This is item number 13. This is an island nation. Japan is a nation of islands. Okay, and so we are looking for something that has an island theme. Now, coming from North America, my first island theme impression is something like Hawaii, something tropical, palm trees and sand, but I didn't really have a lot like that. Maybe the song Hawaii by Max Webster, but I haven't listened to it for a while. So then I just started thinking about other island places, and I had one, and that led me to this next one. Actually, I thought of Iona, a Christian progressive rock band from Ireland, but that led me on to this one here. This is the Rankin Family, their second album, Fare Thee Well Love, again released in the early 90s. They are from Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia, so very strong Celtic feeling to the music. But there's a song on here called Fisherman's Son, which is exactly that. It's about a fisherman's son, hauling the lobster and jigging the cod. And it just really captures that feeling of somebody who makes a living of the sea, or at least his father makes a living of the sea, and he is learning the ways of being a fisherman, getting out on the boat, getting out to the sea. So exactly that. If you live on an island, probably one of the main industries you would be part of would be something to do with fishing or the sea. So for an island image from Cape Breton Island, the Rankin Family and the song Fisherman's Son. Number 14, rainy day music. Japan is a pretty green country, and the reason for that is that it does get its fair share of rain around here. In fact, we were supposed to have a typhoon coming this way, but it seems it has petered out before reaching my end of the town, my neck of the woods. But thinking about rain songs, immediately two came to mind, partly because I did a rain song video early this year for Chris Profi's thread, plus I did a rain song video last year as well, which was my own idea. But two songs came to mind. So first of all, we revisit Yanomaki, or Makiyano, however you want to call her. I'm used to calling her Yanomaki. Yano is her family name. And from this album here, what the heck was it called now? Ikaze, I think it was. Really can't see very well. There is a track on here, the second last track, it's Go Go Godzilla, which is May Rain. And it is exactly that. It starts with the sound of rain and acoustic guitar, but gets into a very dramatic and powerful chorus about one day we will be sucked into the blue sky and live our dreams, or something like that, if I remember correctly. Anyway, Go Godzilla, May Rain. And the other one here is from one of my favorite Japanese artists, Garnet Crow, from their album Stay. Both of these go back to the mid-2000s. There is a song on here called Rainy Soul, which was my favorite track off this album until I revisited this album a few years ago and found out maybe half of them are my favorite tracks now. But anyway, Rainy Soul, a very beautiful track, very powerful. Love it. So, two rain songs, May Rain, Go Godzilla, and Rainy Soul, Yanomaki and Garnet Crow. I can see this is going to be a long video, but I am coming towards the end of it now. We are at item 15, Wabisabi. Wabisabi is a Japanese word. To say it very simply, it is finding the imperfection in beauty, or rather beauty in imperfection. As Brian described it for music, it is a fantastic moving piece of music that has noticeable errors or mistakes in it. Might be a dropped drumstick or a miscue, a slightly off note or off key sung note, I don't know, something like that. And that just, I had only one that came to mind almost immediately. Shonen Knife. Shonen Knife are a pop-punk band from Osaka with a very original sound, at least for me. I have since found that some of the female pop-punk or new age type, new wave, bands of the late 70s and early 80s do actually share a similar sound. But these were, and still are, three women with the lead vocalist whose English pronunciation is clearly not perfect. It's fine, she's Japanese, she doesn't need to have perfect pronunciation. Her singing skills are also not perfect, and while they play their music with a lot of gusto and a lot of creativity in many cases, there are audible imperfections in the music, which is part of the charm. They became very popular in the late 80s when an American label owner visited Japan and brought one of their albums back to Seattle. And he loved the album so much, he wanted to release an album of theirs in the US. Then they were invited over to play one night at a festival in Los Angeles. Kurt Cobain saw them at that festival, loved them so much, he asked them to open for Nirvana on their tour of the UK in 1991, shortly before Nevermind broke out big in the world. So they actually met and toured with Nirvana at that time, before Nirvana became huge. Shona Knife are still going. They just released an album last year, actually. It is still Naoko Yamano and her sister Atsuko, who have been with the band since the beginning, although Atsuko was away for a little while. But the third person has changed a few times over the years. Anyway, it is a young lady now, and I am planning to do a Shonen Knife history video coming up sometime in the next few weeks anyway. So, for Wabisabi, Beauty in Imperfection, I'm going with Shonen Knife from Osaka. This is their debut album from 1983, by the way, Burning Farm. Artwork done by Atsuko Yamano. Origami Me. Origami Me is item number 16. Show an album with an intricate design or some packaging that is really unusual. So this is Transport Arian and the album Therianthrope from several years ago now. It is released on the Melodic Revolution Records label, and my hands are getting kind of sticky and sweaty because it is really humid in this room. So I am not going to open this. Instead, I'm going to show you the video I made of me opening this back in 2018. So this is me opening up this album. Have a look. Before we get into the music, I just want to show you this unique packaging here. This is the CD. It is limited to 100 only, and there is a rather unusual way to open it. It's handmade, and there, no, sorry, that's a birthday card. You have to, somewhere here, there's a, hey, there we go. No, sorry, that's a map. Oh, here we go. You have to lift this flap here, and then it folds out like so. And then we have inside each of the songs a little picture here, some artwork, and the lyrics double-sided. And of course there's the disc itself, and then this lovely handmade fold-out CD case. So for item 16, Origami Me, I choose Transport Arian's album Therianthrope for the unique packaging. Next is Fusion Frenzy. Now, just thinking about progressive rock, there are a lot of bands out there who go crazy with the fusion. Even some modern progressive metal bands will go crazy with the fusion. Even thinking about Enslaved, who started out as a Norwegian black metal band, have been fusing in various styles, Opeth as well. But one band kind of came to mind. I thought I should mention them. This is Flaming Rau, a progressive band from Germany. And Flaming Rau is a bit like Arian. They have their songs and their band, but they also invite lots of guests. This album here, The Pure Shine, is based on the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, was it? And yeah, I think it was anyway. And they have like 10-12-minute songs with these wonderful instrumental interludes, and we have like Celtic music with, what is it, Uilleann pipes? You'll get some heavy metal sections, you'll get some traditional progressive rock sections, you might even get some like country music or piano type sections. It's just wonderful. I have 2 of their 3 albums, and both of them, though quite different from one another, are wonderful excursions into a variety of styles of music, just stitched together beautifully for very exciting music listening experience. So that is Flaming Rau. This is The Pure Shine. The other album I have is Mirage, A Portrayal of Figures, which is also a fantastic album. Tokyo Nights. Alright, I'm imagining Brian down in Tokyo, heading out onto the street, seeing the city lights, the people, the life, the activity, people going out to eating and drinking establishments, having a good time. My experience with city life, at least in Japan, has been more like heading out onto the town, seeing the bright lights and the colorful signs and all the happy people going to eating and drinking establishments, but later on seeing people who are stumbling, falling down, being carried by friends, people vomiting up noodles and whatever on sidewalks and on train station platforms. And it's like it starts out really glamorous, but then turns into like a real kind of piss fest. With you wonder, like, my gosh, aren't we human beings above all this? Holy crap. So I'm going with a song that starts out with that feeling of wonder and awe and amazement, but ends with disillusionment. And so I'm picking from this year's release by the power metal band Unleash the Archers. There's a song on here called, this album by the way is called Phantoma, and there's a song on here called Green and Glass. The story is of an AI who enters a robotic android body and takes it over, and wants to join up with the human world because it has observed the internet, it has seen what people post about themselves and their lives on the internet, and the human race just looks so beautifully fantastic and wonderful. And this AI has gained consciousness and wants to be part of that. However, the Earth has been seriously destroyed by environmental mismanagement and abuse, and now human societies live in these great covered domes of green and glass, where inside everything is beautiful with green trees and clean water and gardens and these wonderful towers of glass, but outside everything is a wasteland where only robots can exist. So she enters, it's a she, she enters this bubble of green and glass and is in complete awe and wonder. However, upon meeting the collective, a group of people who are controlling the human world, she finds that they are a very unpleasant bunch, and she also discovers that the human race is not as fantastic and wonderful as she thought, and she leaves there being very disillusioned and in a way heartbroken. Dreams are broken. So that is my impression of the city life. At first it is glamorous and wonderful and fantastic. However, it ends that way only for some people who go home after a wonderful experience at the theater or at a nice restaurant and call it a night, while others are staggering around, falling on the sidewalk, puking on benches and so on. So there we go, my impression of Tokyo nightlife. 2 more to go. Number 19, end of the day. What music do you listen to unwind at the end of the day? Well, as you heard, my end of the day involves commuting back home again, including a lot of riding on trains and then a long walk through the neighborhood before coming home and then spending the next 3 hours waiting for my family to get itself together and everybody into the shower and out before I finally have my turn at 2 o'clock. Right now my daughter is probably complaining about her hair. Anyway, if I were to relax at the end of the day, one album I might want to listen to is Days of Future Past by the Moody Blues. And this is also the very first CD I ever bought back in 1989. And I think it is a wonderful album for unwinding at the end of the day, especially since the end of the album does exactly that, unwinds at the end of the day. Okay, long video. I'm not going to do a video this long for a long time, I hope. But last item is The Last Samurai, a song or music to be played at your funeral. I've never thought about that. If I gave it some thought, I would probably say Old and Wise by the Alan Parsons Project from their Eye in the Sky album way back in 1981. But as I was thinking about it, I would prefer to have a selection of some of my favorite songs, most of them fun, with, you know, just for people to kind of celebrate that he's finally out of our lives. He's finally pushed off. Well, anyway. No, the song, once I thought about it, I couldn't shake it. I couldn't think of any other song that I would feel could take this place. So it is from Sloan's album Steady, their most recent album, and it is the final track, Keep Your Name Alive. And it is just a fun, upbeat rock song with Jay Ferguson singing. If you know Sloan, you know they all sing, all 4 members sing, and Jay Ferguson has a unique voice. Anyway, he's singing the final song, Keep Your Name Alive. So that is, I guess, if I had a list of songs to be played at my funeral, that would be the last one, as they would either drop me in the ground or shove me into the crematorium. One or the other. Anyway, so there you have it. That is my 20 items of Brian's fantastic list to contribute to the Japan Vinyl Tag of 2024. I do thank you if you sat through this whole video. I really do promise I will not make such long videos now for quite some time. I'll try to get back to keeping them short again. Anyway, do check out Brian's video. If you feel like you want to participate, select any number of the items you feel you want to talk about and join in. 10 items, 15, 12, 9, whatever you're comfortable doing. Thank you for watching. I will not talk anymore. See you in another video sometime. Bye, folks.